So the discussion about art and science, the fact that they were not talking to each other, started a long time ago. And if you're familiar with C.P.'s No Two Cultures, is the most famous article written on this subject. I'm Italian, so I like to start with Lucio Fontana, the White Manifesto. But. So you go back a long time, and Leonardo, the Leonardo Journal and the International Society for Art, Science and Technology was born in the late 60s. Mark, which year? 67?
67.
67.
Our 50th next year.
50th anniversary next year. And the Djerassi was founded by a scientist. You know, one of the largest art spaces in its times, probably also today, was founded by Djerassi. I hope you know who he was. Unfortunately, he passed away not long ago. And that was in the 70s, right? So this story has been going on for a long time. Now, I fast forward to 2016 because something happened this year, which I think it could be remembered as a major event, at least cultural event. You know, you probably read about it. Google, when Google does it, it becomes very famous. It actually wasn't Google the first one to do it, but they displayed this art made by neural network. And there's something special about the neural network displaying that art. It actually, I mean, a little bit of background. 1 or 2 years ago in England, somebody had the idea while he was training the neural network, I want to see what the neural network has learned. So he found a way to ask the neural network, show me what you learned so far. Let's say I'm training the neural network to recognize trees. Show me what you learned so far. And then surprisingly, the neural network did print the picture of a tree, but in its own style. You know? So then the idea came, and this person at Google invented the term, coined the term inceptionism. You know? So we have a new art movement, which is art made by neural networks. Now, why is this relevant to art science things? Well, first of all, one of the people at Google who did this is an artist. It sort of came natural. Nobody forced them to start thinking about art. They were, you know, these are people who are trying to design intelligent machines. And one of the things that they started doing is art. Maybe you know that then this art was sold in San Francisco. I have no idea what the person who bought it, I have no idea what they bought. If they bought a frame, I would have bought the neural network, so I can have the neural network make as many. But anyway, so I think that's kind of where art and science is today, is going to be tomorrow. You know, we're getting to a point that all this emphasis on art and science collaboration maybe will go away. Maybe it will come natural that we mix the two. Now, this program, coming to down to earth, is unique because we put artists and scientists at the same level. You probably heard of a lot of artists in residence programs, but how many scientists in residence programs? And in this case, we have 6 artists, 6 scientists who live here together, and they are on equal terms. When I welcome them, when they arrive, I always tell them, you're an experiment within an experiment within an experiment. You know, it's an experiment, the art science thing. This institution, the Djerassi, is an experiment, and you are an experiment within an experiment. Okay, that said, so we start the conversation, and I would like to know if you have any opinions about this thing, about this artificial intelligence making art, you know. And one thing I want to add, I don't remember, I was talking with you maybe, even you probably heard about the singularity, super intelligence, machines that will be so intelligent we cannot control them. And then it always split in 2 camps. One camp says they will give us paradise, immortality. The other camp says they will kill us all, you know, just science fiction. To me, these scientists who are writing these books are doing art because it's not based on science. I can debunk those books very easily, but these are scientists imagining a future that is impossible today, in my opinion. What is that? Isn't that art? Who has comments?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of why. So over in the corner, it's kind of dropping various sort of papers from like Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk. Okay, there we go. That's how it works. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of why sort of, you know, that's like some of the sort of papers that have been kind of sharing over here from like Nick Bostrom et al. Is they kind of read like performance art. No, they kind
So
of
Nick Bostrom wrote the book titled Superintelligence.
Yes. So yeah, he's the one who thinks that, I mean, specifically that either the machine is going to colonize the reachable volume of the universe and perhaps take us along for the ride, or extinction, one or the other. Nothing in between. Definitely one of those two. That's absolutely brilliant. Just as a concept, it's something you just kind of want to pick up and kind of turn over and sort of like look at and kind of, this is fascinating. It's brilliant. There's kind of, there's the book, The Superintelligence. If you're in the business of trying to find some like plots for like sci-fi movies, there's probably like several hundred within the first few chapters. Yeah, it's incredible. But then the other side of it is, so we got the kind of artificial superintelligence on one side, which is kind of philosophical discussion, and the kind of artificial intelligence, which is actually a much more kind of, in many ways, mundane kind of engineering, kind of iterative development of existing technologies over a long period of time. And things like the kind of Google Deep Dream and these sort of experiments that kind of come out of that. So I mean, like personally, from my point of view, the thing that kind of drew me towards sort of like why AI, why spend the past couple of weeks learning AI, and for me is neither an artist, a scientist, or a technologist, but some kind of spurious thing in the middle that's either all or none of the above. It's another tool, it's another material. It's like, you could be using oils, you could be using the body, or you could be using algorithms. It's that kind of, it's that same thing. And a deep understanding of the tools and materials means that you can start to kind of turn it over and do interesting things with it.
Hi. Well, you just brought up materials. Where I would go right away with a discussion of artificial intelligence is perhaps to suggest that all intelligence is artificial to some extent, or not to draw a line between human intelligence and other intelligence. And a question for me would be, how do we take into account intelligence being linked to or coming from and through the materiality of whatever the thing we are talking about is? So how does the materiality of the computer, for example, contribute to the development of intelligence as something that is relational, as something that comes about through activities and exchanges that's not contained just inside the brain or just inside, we're calling it a neural network. So not just inside that, but it's in the relationship.
Okay, so we got you tied up? Okay, so I'm mostly interested in making transgenic humans, like making humans that have genes edited in order to take on different shapes and forms and consciousness. But I would say, first of all, there is a mirror to the artificial intelligence debate insofar as if you were to take genes from other organisms, the first thing you have to understand is the true range of biodiversity. It will take a computer to compile all the bioinformatic data. Already we have online databases like BLAST and SciBLAST and stuff that are filled with sequences that are too much for us to even comprehend. So if we want, let's say, salamander toes on the ends of our fingers, you have to actually go and get the sequence. And the full range of what we can become, though, could maybe only be conceptualized through artificial intelligence. Number two, the way we would test the human edited genome deep dream is by asking our children, like, how you doing with that platypus medulla? And like, is school okay? So, and that's sort of like, that's another deep dream possibility. I don't think it's all science fiction, that's the weird thing. I think we're deeply capable. I do see a question.
I would maybe.
Yes.
Question. Okay.
You want to come here? Or to join
No,
us?
hang up here.
Okay. Then you have to shout.
Use your outdoor voice so everyone can hear. All right, my outdoor voice. Is that good? Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. So the moral question of that. So let's say you can create basically any kind of human. What is the safeguard to make sure that that technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands to build like soldiers, for instance?
Oh, I do have an answer to that. I'll do this really quick. Queerness. I mean, this is weird, but I'm a queer transgenic advocate. And part of it is because I'm afraid of perfectionism. And that includes like the idea that we need to first up our intelligence is not actually, that doesn't sound like a safeguard to me. Like we should work on like finding the wisdom gene, which probably doesn't exist, you know, it's based on experience. Or like removing gullibility from the human genome. I don't know, I'm holding on to that one.
ACES got me hooked on Bostrom too, and I've been working my way through it, and I came up here to poke holes in it. I was going to second what Teoma said about he's falling short in terms of the physical world. It's like, yeah, if we could just put our brains in a box, it'd be all good. And then he says, oh, but then you need an actuator. Once you get the actuator, then you can interact with the physical world, and it's all going to be good. But there's one hole, but also thinking about the idea of glitch, I really like that. I mean, it doesn't, we're going for this perfection, whatever the hell that is, right? But glitches are beautiful, and I think there's been a lot of glitches around here that have done amazing things here at Djerassi.
Hello. Yeah, people kept telling me I should come here probably because as a neuroscientist I feel like I should spend the word in defense of human intelligence before we start building artificial ones or transgenic ones. No, I think all I want to say is like, as a scientist, and now I'm much more interested in science communication and education, I feel like there's a lot we don't understand about the way we understand the world. And maybe, personally, I'm much more interested in figuring out that. So how we process information, how we communicate with each other. I feel like we have a lot to learn on that. And yeah, maybe if we want to avoid the extinction scenario, maybe we should first learn how to communicate with these other intelligence.
Okay, I'm glad that Maya sat at the table. Before you say what you want to say, let me tell you, we had a panel at USF on when machines make art, is it still art? And two things came out. The first one is the classic. Who's the creator? Okay? The second one is that somebody said, well, it's not art if I don't understand the process. There's a process behind making the art. So I just wanted to put this also on the table.
Well, I'm not so sure about the process, to start with the second question. You can enjoy a beautiful painting or listen to music without knowing really the process behind. About the creator, I think we're coming now to a time when the mega role of the artist, of the creator, is downgraded, and when the audience comes more and more into the creative process. Personally, I'm totally addicted to this way to make art, and I would say that I act as a farmer. My idea is the seed. I will go out, throw it, and then it's up to all who encounter, who meet the idea, to take care of it and to grow it in a certain way. So depending on what kind of care you put into the idea, the artwork will grow. Today we made this experiment, or why experiment? Actually, the experiment grew into an artwork, and it will become an artwork. It will become video, a film. And this is also a kind of ethical question as well, to give the creative role of the audience, to eliminate, if possible, the limit, the border between art and normal life.
Hi. I have nothing to add. There's a question.
Sorry, just to follow up what somebody was saying earlier, but is the point of, that if artificial intelligence makes art, who's the creator? I mean, it's not like saying, well, my daughter's an artist and she did this thing, but really I'm the creator. Right? I made that. Right? I mean,
You did. You're the boss.
Right. So I mean, at some point, and somebody mentioned something earlier about materials. How, is it with the intelligence? Is it different because the materials that make the intelligence are different, and the perception is dictated by the materials with which we perceive. Right. Our perception is controlled by the biomechanics of how we perceive things. Right. And the structure of the eye and
and the chemicals that are part of that, I mean, that all dictates it. So I would think for artificial intelligence it would be the same. Constraints are within what it's made of, and constraints its intelligence.
Okay, so question here, and then back to
I just wanted to go back to what you were discussing. This woman asked the question about the danger of creating, soldiers or something. I found the answer unsatisfactory. If glitches are good, if the genetic database can't possibly be understood except by artificial intelligence, if there's nothing as simple in genetic expression as a wisdom gene, so we don't understand ourselves from any level, forget genetics, we don't know where we're going, isn't this going to be like every other invention of man that we're just going to plunge ahead until something goes wrong, and then we'll go back and try to make the system to understand that?
Oh yeah, maybe. I mean, that's I got it here. But all I'm asking for is that as we start to engineer ourselves, we don't just couch it in the language of first health and then enhancement, but that we think a little broader. I'm being sometimes satirical, but that's like a weak argument. I'm also being sincere and saying that just as we're starting to accept difference in people's ways of being and people's origins, where there should be some acceptance for other aesthetics than perfection or utilization for the military or for astronauts. Now, I do think that DARPA and the military, and NASA are working together to make better soldiers and better astronauts already, because we can. And we know, like 50 years from when we can, we find out we did. But I would hope that in a full-on appreciation of biodiversity would include not just things that are utilizable, but actually, this is horrible, things that are just represent variety. It's sort of an anarchist position, but it's not that helpful because it's pro-tech in some ways. But it's sort of like, let's make sure that pinstripes are on the markets for babies. Not just like legs that are better for sports and brains that are better for math. Something quite the opposite.
Art. Yes, shout. Shout or come here. I'm sorry? You want to come here? Okay. So your microphone?
It's a fishbowl, join it.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we first heard the story about the guy who invented the machine that was able to create a picture or paint a picture, and then, when somebody says, does the inventor get credit for that? And then somebody says, well, isn't that rather like saying that if somebody gives birth to a child and the child creates the thing, didn't the mother actually create the picture? Well, I wanted to give you a middle kind of story between those two extremes, just to show you that this really is a kind of a continuum. When you learn how to be an improvising musician, what you're really doing is you're storing various patterns in your hands, and you store various patterns that learn how to respond to whatever the other musicians are doing. And when the time comes to actually improvise, you don't think about what parts you're playing. You don't have time. It has to happen right away. So you're not really creating it at the time. You really created what your hands were doing back in the practice room, in the woodshed. And then the hands were doing it. And I don't think there's that much difference, really, between storing the patterns in your hands and storing it in a computer that you built. It's not really easy to draw the line between that. And when somebody tells me the story, and then people do have machines that improvise music, but I think the fellow who built that machine that improvised the music is really not doing anything that's that different than what I do when I practice, and develop certain skills in my fingers, so that, I basically build a machine out of my own muscles, which improvises music. And do I get any credit? Well, I get credit for having built the machine, but I can't. There's no deliberation going on in the process, in that sense. There's no act of will, because the music goes too fast for that.
Yeah. Yes, sit here, sit here, sit here.
So I think that question of an act of will is really interesting, and is that the definition of art? I'm not trying to define art, I'm sorry, take that sentence back. Is that the way we're, what have I done? That is will, when we bring will to it, is that what the artistic process is? My brother, ladies and gentlemen, he wouldn't, And for me, that idea of what is that absence of will, and it's connected to what Teed was saying about the idea of what is that automatic things when you have trained or when you have taken in, you've had conversations, you've read books, you've seen other kinds of art, you've had, you know, late night conversations with scientists, whatever it is, that those things, I'm not sure that it really is about intentionality or will. I know you weren't saying that, but I just wanted to say that.
John?
I guess an interesting question to ask is why are, like, the question is who built this piece of art, and another question is why do we care? And I think part of it is that we're curious about the context in which this thing was created. We want to know something about how to interact with it or interpret it or understand it, or I don't know. But I think going in deeper into that question about why, you know, why even ask this question? Why is this question so important? Why is it important to know who the author of this book was, or the composer of this piece, or whatever? I mean, these things always come out of interaction. They come out of circumstances and contexts. And the work with Tioma and Laura and Stacy that I've been collaborating on, it's much richer than, it's much richer than could be described here, and it's not a creative act of any one person. It's certainly not even a creative act of those 4 people. It actually includes, to some degree, all of the people that are here that we're living with. It includes all of this stuff.
And I think for me, I'm one of the scientists, and I think that, I know, it's great. I think that for me, the being in a place like this, I really feel like it brings home the fact that our professional practices as artists or scientists or makers or craftspeople, it's not that different depending on what we label ourselves as. And being in a place like this allows you that sort of really in-depth time with your work and with the work of other people. I think it's been a little alarming for us today. I think I can speak for everyone. We're usually about now, probably some of us would still be in our PJs in this room. So having everyone here today, it's a very different feeling because I was speaking for myself about the PJs, that it's a very different experience to our usual day. And I think that the richness of the experience here is that the sort of quiet routines we all develop of working and being with each other and collaborating. And I think, like John said, it's not that we're just working alone or in small groups, but we're actually all making this thing together. And it's really nice. So thanks for coming.
I'd like to build on something Maya was saying earlier about this change in art, where we're trying to include the public, the audiences first, the agency of people is the thing that matters, and suggest that actually that's going on in science too. The interest in big data, which can't really be dealt with a single person, the interest in citizen science, let's all count the birds, let's all take the rain measurements, seems like a similar kind of move. So I think it's more than just observation techniques looking similar across art and science, but also that there are real different work patterns that are coming along, a zeitgeist of what's happening to both art and science at the same time that seems to have some really similar impacts. I think that's something that's been good for us to talk about how that changes work practice.
Well, I'm jumping off, maybe building a connection between John's comment about why does it matter who created it? Do we choose a singular creator? Do we ourselves try to hold on to authorship? And then bringing that to some things that you brought up about big data, sort of distribution of knowledge and data, and how do we bring that together and try, or not try, to hold on to it, to sum it up. I think there's something, a sort of trend in the conversation that leads me to think about the ways in which intelligence or agency, I'm not going to offer definitions, are something that I understand to be distributed between many, many people, between many, many things, and very much a part of the environment or the context. So I wouldn't speak about, for example, in the case of the body, all of the knowledge or everything that we're perceiving being contained inside of me or inside of my site, I would talk about how that's distributed within the activity.
Hi, I'm Wei. Was in the barn, just ran back. It's a really interesting question. It's backs for some question that I've been thinking for a long time. Is what's the difference between creation and discovery? And let's say you create something that belongs to you, but if you pick up a stone in the beach, a beautiful stone, does it belong to you or doesn't belong to you? And also, like right now with machine intelligence, the machine learning, and more you're gonna see, so far we think creativity is our human specialty, and discovery, the ability to discover new things, our human specialty. But what's going to happen is a lot of knowledge is shifting towards machine-discovered knowledge, machine-discovered patent. Now, if machine discovers some interesting artistic artifact, is it still art? So I don't really have any answer to those questions, but just the more you think about it, the more questions you have.
Anybody in the audience, please raise your hand if you have comments.
Yeah, so just coming back to that sort of idea of kind of authorship and kind of, you know, whose hand is involved in the production of something. I mean, this is something that so the other thing that do is Mad Lab, so community space for science, technology, and art. And one of the things that we've had to learn to adapt to, and I think people are having to learn to adapt to more and more, is this kind of idea of sort of collective, sort of working collectively to create things. This idea of personal authorship is actually less, it's becoming less important. And you can kind of see that, just to throw that kind of, I'm a technologist, I can't help but look at things from a tech perspective, but like what happens in the open source world is, is precisely this. It's like, there's no single author that produces Linux, even though Torvalds might be like there as a figurehead. And this is kind of this idea is filtering more into just the way that we generally operate day to day.
I want to add also about data. We had talked a little bit. Scientists and artists tend to go to a really similar place, which is the edge of knowledge, right? Like, where is the unknown? I want to stand on the edge of it. And artists tend to bring back like a postcard, like an I was there, kind of a tourism in the unknown, whereas scientists bring something home in a box, and they're like, I got something in this black box from the unknown. And so we ran into, we had a lot of collaboration. Like when I went and made centipede DNA infused sperm, these guys picked up on it. Asa and David made like a measurement device, and David figured out how to convert the data to like a three-dimensional drone path, the flight of the centisperm. Sorry. Anyway, and then there were all these drawings, and also like why you help with the time lapse, and we got this time lapse of something we didn't know what it was, but it was certainly a really, really like a three-dimensional data array in the sky. And the time lapses look great on your wall, David. I'm like, whoa. And so we arrived at some data that we couldn't understand based on something from the beyond. I mean, that's like the beginning of that sort of proof of concept. And I have a funny feeling because you guys are doing the same thing. You're entering the beyond too and coming back with some data, right? So
I just wanted to add, just a little small comment about this. One of the interesting things about being together with all of these different people is you get to see the different ways in which people use space and use their bodies and look for material and look for things and where they go to get them. And it's fascinating. It's in music we work in a certain way, and it's easy to get stuck in a certain type of box. But watching other people do frankly crazy things, you get to see them asking similar questions from a very different point of view, and it's it's not inspirational for me anyway, but it's like it widens my vision about what it is that I think I'm interested in or think I'm doing.
Yes, the comment was more like a question, but can also become an answer to the initial question. It's related to all these things, distributed intelligence and different perspectives. And I was thinking to myself, half joking, half seriously, why we refer to all these things as like the intelligence, as like always in the singular. And like again, from the neuroscience perspective, maybe there are many different types of intelligences. The same thing can be many different types of artificial intelligences. And maybe we need them all together to, kind of figure out the answer. So in that sense, also the authorship, I think it becomes less relevant. I mean, personally, also in what I'm doing, I don't feel like I'm really generating new ideas, but I'm always like translating old ones or interpreting old ones. So it's kind of, the result is really the product of all these different intelligences and perspectives.
Yeah, I think Maya told me something interesting. I think, was it yesterday? You said something about you don't see yourself as the creator, but as the editor. Am I right?
Yes, or maybe as a farmer.
Or as a farmer.
Maybe as a farmer.
So I would also like to bring in the audience. What's the role of the audience in all of this?
Like today, thank you everybody who participated in the performance. So actually the audience is the creator, or the audience materializes the idea simply by following the idea and my minimal instructions. You actually materialized my idea. The memory I told you, the idea about the performance, you executed it. So this is, then it comes to my role as editor at the end to cut and to mount the different scenes of the video and the film. But actually you guys made the work. And I'm very much interested also in creative process, which is not determined from the beginning. To be as open as possible and to embrace unpredictable situations. So like when I invited you go to the field and shout the names, I had no idea how many would go. Would anyone go? Because this is also a possibility that you will tell, I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. And how would you shout the names? Which names would you choose? All these factors are unpredictable. And I feel here there is a big challenge and the charm of doing this kind of art, and the attraction and the power as well, to be open and to invite all these unpredictable situations. Or like, as Adam said, to be on the edge of the unknown. All this was unknown before we created it. So like art and science in different ways, in different patterns, but it is always pushing the edge further and further, creating new models, new forms to understand this reality. Or maybe we simply create this reality by doing different things. This is also a way to see it.
Yeah, this is also a challenge for the sciences today, because science, in science, the audience is typically perceived as a passive recipient of scientific knowledge, right? Which is different from arts that are becoming more and more interactive, participatory. Diane invited children to join the piece, and John had some, John and Teoma, that the audience had a particular way to. That doesn't happen in science, right? Typically, the scientist just gives a talk.
Yeah, and I think that might not be entirely true, because actually we're inviting people into sciences a lot more, right? We're asking people to collect data in different ways. We're saying, please count the birds or look at the rain gauge. We're also saying, hey, we have this old data from botanical gardens nationwide. Would you please go online and help us transcribe that data? Because actually a machine can't do that well. So I think actually there are ways in which both groups of people are really asking for participation of others. Now, I think we might say, why is that? Why at this moment does it not seem good to us to have closed knowledge? Why do we reopen these gates to amateurs? Is there a process of democracy that's a part of that? Is it just the tools are now able to do it? So we can all look at our computers and take a look at the star map and say, which constellation do I think this is, and report it in? And how good do we think that data is? There's always that big conversation about, does this all need to be verified again? The fact is that most scientists I've talked to doing this feels the data is actually really good, that some of their early graduate students are not actually as good as somebody who's spent a few hours with this botanical garden data. But this is, I think there are a lot of questions about why at this moment is this opening again after a long time of closing the lab doors.
Margot, how are we doing with time? I don't have a watch.
About 7 minutes.
Okay. Closing statements, basically, guys.
Yeah, just coming back to the kind of idea of sort of citizen science again. There's a little while ago there was a bit of a battle for what the term citizen science actually meant. I remember sitting in a whole kind of discussion about citizen science at the Royal Society. And at that point nobody really kind of knew. It was like, oh, we're going to involve the public. And then it's kind of like, yes, the great unwashed. And there was, and so the discourse that kind of emerged was very much this one about, okay, well, so the scientists are going to do very careful experimental design, and then we can determine precisely how we want the great unwashed to we can bring them in just this way, so they don't make too much of a mess, but we get what we want out of them. And it's kind of like, this is kind of like, it's fine. I mean, it's good. It produces fantastic results, universal, these sorts of things, but you lose a lot of the kind of the mess, the humanity of actually just kind of bringing all these kind of people together and go like, I don't know, let's just figure some things out. Let's just create a bit of a mess here. You kind of lose something by not having that. Thanks.
Okay, closing statements. We have a few more minutes.
Yeah, well, I just like to contribute a little bit of my own experience in art and science on this particular subject. And well, I used to be a scientist working in research at quantum dots. And so for quite a few people here, you all have this experience that you devote your life, you spend so much time, deep thought, and there might be like 5 people in the world understand what you're doing. So that really bringing a context needed to really understand a lot of the knowledge you've been generated. I see that not just in the science, but also in the art field. There's a lot of art that requires certain background knowledge, the context. Without that, it's really hard to connect to. Now, what we're doing here also, actually what my current work, including my work with Diane Jia Yi over there with the kinetic arts, is associated with can we bridge a lot of scientific concept, artistic concept, in the artistic expression. My own experience is the audience is very, very much the completing part. It's almost like you have a circuit. Without audience, the circuit is open, does not complete. With audience, the circuit complete. Now, that's one reason why we love kids a lot, performance. When you have kids around, they have no fear of trying things. And you give them something, they take it to the place you never imagined. So that's been wonderful. That opens up a lot of things in the performance.
No, you go ahead. Okay, I'll go.
I think I can also second the kids thing. I was working on my knitting machine earlier and had many young helpers, and they think it's great fun. I usually think that it feels like I'm working in a factory, and that's wonderful. It sort of made me see things differently, and I think I've been thinking a lot about what sort of unites all of us, because we've become this little weird family. And I think that really a lot of what we're doing is striving for communication. We have, all of us are sort of bursting with our different knowledge backgrounds and our passion for what we do. But I think one of the things that I'm a geologist and environmental scientist, and I struggle and strive a lot to communicate information that is often really bad news. You know, the drought, global warming, none of it is like, yay, the environment's great today. No, everything's horrible. And it's difficult, you know, when you're teaching students to actually strike that balance and thinking about new ways to communicate scientific information. Artists are great at communicating, scientists not so much. And it's something I think that scientists are starting to realize that artists can actually help with that. And I'm actually understanding my own work better when I engage with these creative processes that I've been working on here and elsewhere. And I think that whether it's through a play or letters or dance or breathing or any of the things that we've been doing, I think that at the base of it, what we are doing is trying to communicate these ideas, and you know, and we've I think been doing that. So, and I'm really happy about it. So here you go, Juanita.
I write, but I'm also a director, and for me, that's the other half where I feel like as a writer, I go in, I think we all have these sort of in and out processes, and as a writer, for me, it's a solo activity, it's not for everyone. But as a director is where I feel like I am just part of a creative organism, and the reason why it's so fun is because it is the sense, it's almost like that idea of your fingers are doing something on their own as an improviser. It's that sense that everything is working as an organism, and that idea of being a part of an organism, I think, is a warm and fuzzy feeling.
Excellent. Okay, thank you guys. And anybody in the audience who has feedback tonight, tomorrow, whatever, we have an email address, send us feedback. And I want to thank Margot again. Djerassi, wherever you are.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you made it part of it.
Let me say something.
Okay.
So I'm just getting introduced to you by being here today. I'm Dale Djerassi, and I'm a founding trustee of this artist residency. And I'm moved to just briefly say something, and you just properly introduce that something, which is to say that my father, who's the late founder of this program, was a very distinguished research scientist and professor, and devoted a lot of his life to doing that, from really the age of 18 into his 60s, and did really important research and devoted himself to that. In the last 30 years of his life, he died when he was 91 years old, the last 30 years of his life, he devoted to writing novels and plays. And he defined a genre for himself, which was science in fiction, and very clearly not science fiction, according to him, meaning real science or plausible science within fictional plots. And he described the larger mission as really recognizing that a huge amount of the population really didn't understand science or scientists, and maybe more the people, the scientists even. And he really wanted to humanize them, you know, enough with the Frankenstein or the, you know, whatever, you know, stereotypes or caricatures of scientists might exist in popular culture. And so he really felt that because we recognize the significance of science and technology to the fate of humanity, really, that having so much of the population really ignorant of that is a danger to society. And the effective way in his mind at that point to do something about that was to push that into these genres of fiction and novels and plays and that sort of thing. So when Margot Knight, who took over as the executive director here several years ago, began this program of which you are a part, she really was, I would say, manifesting something that goes back to the essence of the founder of this program. Now, his founding of the program was something else. It was the result of the ultimate tragedy, the suicide of his daughter, my sister, epic tragedy in our family. And this program has come out of that, which is yet another example of the scientist figuring out how do you address something that's almost unimaginably tragic in your life and do something with that other than just build a monument somewhere. And this program is, in fact, the embodiment of that. So I just wanted to leave it, my comment, to just say all of this, I think, would please the founder, in his form, whatever it may be, as a memory anyway.
Thank you, Dale. I really was inspired by your dad to do this because it had happened accidentally that Carl had invited his artist friends here, and I really wanted it to be more intentional, and I really want to thank the 12 brave people, 14 brave people that joined us this summer for Scientific Delirium Madness 3.0. We just made the selections for next year's Scientific Delirium Madness 4.0. We hope to see many of you here. And because there's always deeper and deeper levels of anything, there is a blog at leonardo.info that you can access. And how many of you, raise your hand, have written blog pieces for the blog? You can read a lot more about the blog. Yes, the rest of you are going to be doing it before you leave, right? There's the Leonardo magazine, and this group will have a section in next May's issue, thanks to our partners at Leonardo. We do have a video about the program, and many of these speakers will be at the lasers that Piero helps to organize, not just in the Bay Area, but around the country. The other inspiration for this program was a book that I read when I was 16 years old that was written in 1943 by one of my favorite authors, Hermann Hesse. It was called The Glass Bead Game. And I had all these different friends in high school, like the geek friends and the math friends and the hippie friends and the greaser friends. I invited them all once to a party, and none of them spoke to each other. And I just cried, because it made me so sad because I loved them all. And what I loved about the Glass Bead Game, and I recommend it to you all, is it's a high concept game set in the 25th century about a world in which intellectuals play a kind of three-dimensional game that integrates cultural history, mathematics, and science in a very high concept way. They never define what the rules are of the game. They're far too much for us to even imagine what the rules are. And I think we heard some of you trying to figure out what are the rules for this game, where we're talking about ethics and science and math and dance and movement and brain and heart. We're always participants in the Glass Bead Game. And these are just people who are playing at a very, very high level. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank my husband for helping to park all of you. And I want to remind you there are 19 turnouts between here and Skyline. Put your lights on, creep around the blind corners. Don't be a stranger. Come back here for a big gala in October. Come for hikes. If you've got private events, talk to me. And thank you all for being part of Scientific Delirium Madness 3.0.